Let's do a deep dive look into DeWalt's brand new cordless plunge router. It's the 620, also known as the 620B if you get it in the bare tool version, but it is really recommended to be used with the power stack battery. We'll show it with the 5 ampere hour version, but this tool just has a lot of new features. Let's check it out. Now we're actually going to touch on a couple routers today, so if there's any you want more information on, links are down in the description box. So a cordless router that'll handle a 1/2 inch bit, there just aren't that many of these on the market. I know Metabo was the first to market with one. It was a plunge only base, just like this. Milwaukee also has one that's a combo kit, so fixed or plunge base for the Milwaukee. This one though has a unique safety feature built into it, plus an overload protection. So if we slide on that power stack battery, this one's a 5 ampere hour version and works just perfect with this, and it doesn't make the router top heavy. It still feels very neutral and well balanced. But on that safety feature, if we fire it up and then the router experiences a sudden rotation, there'll be a light that appears up here. It's actually the rectangular light will turn red and it'll automatically turn the tool off. Let's see how that works.
I'm from the future.
And there you see that light comes on and it just instantly brings the router down. It'll reset itself and you're ready to go. Whereas the overload protection, you'll see a little white triangle light up and that'll just indicate that you might be overloading your router. Time to decrease your bit depth or just change the feed rate. So those are safety features that the other routers just don't have, but you also get variable speed, so that's nice to be able to dial in your speed depending on the diameter of bit that you're using. And also, you know, with a handheld router, ergonomics is just hugely important to me. So you get the nice rubber overmolded grips, and we go back to finally trigger in the handle. You know, there's really only one combo kit, the Bosch MRC23, that gives you a trigger in the handle. And with this dedicated cordless plunge router, you get back to that. So there's a little safety. You just pull this lever down before you can depress the trigger, and that never is in my way. It's really easy to operate, so just slide your hand down and you're ready to pull the trigger and start the tool. There's also kind of a typical thumb lock in there too, so you can lock this into the on position for longer cuts. You know, some routers are essentially free plunging until you lock a lever, and others it's locked until you press that thumb lever to release it. And this one actually is both, if you can believe it. So let's take a closer look at the plunge controls. And here's how that works. Press the thumb lever to release it, and it acts kind of like a Bosch router, so that's fine. Or press it down further till it clicks and you get a free plunging motion. So there's no stop on that until you just pull this handle back to release the thumb lever, and then it returns to that press to release style plunge action. So if you like a free plunging router, you have that option. If you like it to stop in place as soon as you release the thumb lever, you can do it that way as well. And when you release that thumb lever, it locks rigidly into position. I mean, it doesn't budge, so that's perfect whether you're making inboard plunging cuts or just some edge profiling. And of course, one plunge rod is significantly larger in diameter than the other to accommodate that through the column dust collection, and that's just an excellent trademark that DeWalt has really become known for. Where have we seen that before, right? The old 618, which is a combo kit, and it also has that through the column dust collection. That's an ELU design that DeWalt purchased, and it really started to make DeWalt routers excellent compared to others, and also has a nice plunging action. So if you do need a fixed base, plunge base combo kit, this 618 is another good one to consider. The stance on these two plunge routers is similar, maybe a little bit taller on the 620, but now it's got me curious about the weight. So the venerable 618 and its plunge base clothing comes in at 10 pounds 3 ounces. And amazingly, the 620 comes in at 10 pounds 3 ounces as well. What I always liked about the dust collection on the 618 is it felt integral to the tool. Now with the 620, it has the same feel. They've built on that and made it even a little bit better. So there's a couple little dust shrouds that snap in top side, one for smaller diameter bits and one for larger diameter. There's also 2 sub bases on that, and they both accept this really interesting dust collection fitting, and this is specifically made for edge profiling. And the router attaches to your dust extractor through this handy little fitting. There's a dust cap you can have on there when you're not using your dust extractor, but I really like the redesign on this dust collection fitting. The narrow end goes down into the plunge rod and you'll hear it kind of click into place. So it won't pull free when you don't want it to, but to release it, just push that little button and it'll come straight out. And of course that's compatible with DeWalt's airlock system. Or if you're trying to use a non-DeWalt fitting, looks like it's about 43 millimeters or just about 1.7 inches. And this model does have a wireless link feature so that this can turn on your dust collection automatically if your dust collector is so equipped. Well, give me a quick thumbs up if you like today's topic, but much more important than that, pull that battery off before you change bits or do any maintenance on your machine. You know, if you're used to a cordless drill driver, you probably don't fear that much with the battery in place, but these big heavy-duty cordless routers are a different game entirely, so pull that battery off before you even get started. You wouldn't change bits on a regular router with it plugged in, so really this is no different. And as far as changing bits, you do so with one wrench and this nice collet lock button. The wrench, by the way, is a 22 millimeter that comes with it, and it looks nice and heavy duty. And these next couple bits are what really makes the dust collection efficient. Choose one of these two little inserts, either this small one for little bits or the one with the larger opening if you're doing some larger profiling cuts. And then tip the router back and you'll see this really interesting looking sub base. It's got kind of a teardrop shape opening in it, and that's really part of what makes the dust collection work.
I finally invented something that works!
This special fitting comes with it, and that can be used for edge profiling work, and you may have seen one similar to this by Oneida. You had to kind of switch out the sub base, and it was a great idea, and it looks like it worked well, but I tell you what, if I have to get the tools out and swap a bunch of things over, I'm less likely to use it. That's what makes this fitting great. Not only does it come with the kit, but it snaps in tool-free. It also comes with two sub bases, and you might wonder, well, why is that? They look very similar. This one just has a large opening. It also accepts the same dust fitting for edge profiling, so no problem there. Either sub base will accept that. But this one's better for just large open cuts, whereas this version actually has the option to take guide bushings. And this is the point that kind of hit me like a brick. Things were going so well with this brand new tool, and I noticed, does this even take regular guide bushings? So there's a single sort of odd looking guide bushing that comes with the kit, and you can see how that installs. It just drops into the recess and you retain it with two screws. And I don't typically like this sort of guide bushing. I like Porter cable style guide bushing just because I can use any size I need, plus I can use my inlay kit, and it's a plunge router. That's a lot of what I want to do with it, is cutting recesses for inlays. So that had me scratching my head a little bit, but I figured out that it does indeed, even though it has a strange shape, this will accept a standard guide bushing. Now if you're using the large opening sub base, this one of course will not, but the one I have on here will just accept a direct guide bushing. It can't slide in from the side. You have to just drop it in from the top and add the normal threaded collar from the top. So I was very relieved to see that it'll accommodate all of my standard bushings. Really excellent feature to have with any plunge router. And those guide bushings sit flush with your sub base, so no worries about anything hanging up. Do you know what this means?
Do you know what this means?
It means I can cut shelf pin holes with my plunge router. Or use an inlay guide bushing kit to make gorgeous epoxy or wood inlays. And you get dual bright LED lights, which is a big improvement over the 618. And those stay on for just a bit after you release the trigger. Not only do you get both a 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch collet included with the router, but it's a dedicated 1/4 inch, and I usually consider those much better quality than insert sleeves. So then on the plunge depth turret, you have a 3-position stop, and each of these are adjustable with a little screw and a lock nut. What's probably better about this system is the way that you release the lever to drop that stop down, and it's easier to lock in place than previous models. You also have a tool-free adjustment here, so you can fine-tune the depth of your plunge, and I like the fact that it has a little spring on there so that won't come loose in regular use. However, I think overall, as far as a system, I like this sort of turret on the 618 a little bit better, just because it has 5 stops and you don't have to turn a screw except for just the one. Although the way that you tighten this down is not quite as secure, so some good, some bad, and the changes made there, but I think the system on the 620 works just fine. There's also springs on the 3 screws that secure the edge guide, and good news, guys and gals, the standard edge guide from DeWalt that you may already have is compatible with the 620 router. Is this the right router for you? Look, I don't know. It probably depends on the specific features you need. I know DeWalt makes some good ones, as do other brands, but let's look at a couple other different models and you can think about this a little bit. But 2.25 horsepower motor, brushless, and all cordless. So definitely got a lot of things going for it with the 620. Now, is this DeWalt's first cordless router? Certainly not. With the 600, that's a nice fixed base router. It's kind of a trim router, great for edge profiling. That 600 router will fit right into the 611 plunge base, so that's a nice little kit, but the one limitation there is you can only take 1/4 inch bits. So enter that 620, and that's one of the huge benefits for me. 1/4 inch bits, no problem, but you get the addition of 1/2 inch shank bits. And if you're wondering about the size difference, that's what these two look like side by side. Now, other batteries will certainly work on the 620, like this XR 5 ampere hour battery, but you're just not going to get the same runtime you would with the Power Stack. Milwaukee also has a 2.25 horse cordless kit. This one has a fixed base as well as a plunge base. This, as well as several other corded routers, were reviewed in kind of a mega review I did for Popular Woodworking. So down in the description box, I'll have issue information for you. So side by side with the fixed base on the Milwaukee, it might just be a tad taller on the Milwaukee side, but this is the one I found myself using quite often in the fixed base. I like the body grip design, and it just had a nice feel to it. Rubber pommel grips, I just found that super comfortable to hold and use it all the time for edge profiling, especially if you just wanted to go outside and weren't too concerned about dust collection. There are fittings on this for dust extraction, but it doesn't feel quite as integrated as some of the DeWalt models. And dropping the motor into the plunge base, this threaded Acme rod just kind of goes along for the ride and fits in this hole, but it doesn't have any function in this base. Lock it in and you have all the same functions you'd expect from a quality plunge base. So that's a nice option if you definitely need both plunge and fixed in a cordless 2.25 kit. Just a quick word about plunge action, and if yours is not as smooth as you'd like, I'll give you a quick tip that'll help restore perfect plunging action on this or really any plunge router. Now, my 620 was buttery smooth right out of the box, but you know, sometimes on a new router the bushings will be a little bit tight on the plunge rods, and so if that doesn't have a plunge action that you like, just remove any of the light oil or grease that might have come on your router and apply a dry lubricant like a Bostik Glide Coat. Spray this onto a paper towel or a rag instead of directly on your tool. Let that dry, wipe it off like you would a wax, and put on a second coat. And what you'll notice is that just instantly restores a perfect plunging action, and that'll last for months and months. And the best part is that's a dry lubricant, so it doesn't tend to attract dust. Another hallmark of DeWalt plunge routers is the brass guide bushings, and that's part of what makes the plunge action so smooth. Now, in my router review article for Popular Woodworking magazine, that was October of 2024, issue number 280 if you're interested, one thing we looked at was a one-handed plunge test. Now, this router wasn't available at the time, so let's take a quick look at that. Let's push that lever down to free up the plunging motion, and the test is simple. If you can operate the plunge mechanism with just one hand, it passes the test, and you'd be surprised just how many routers cannot do that. And I think it's in part due to those high quality brass bushings. And you might say, well, why does that test even matter? I'm not routing one-handed. And while that's certainly true, I've found that if you're off the edge of the board with part of the router unsupported, like you would be if you had an edge guide in place to cut grooves along the edge of the board, that's a situation where the plunge rods will tend to bind up if it doesn't pass this test. So it's nice to know that the 620 passes with flying colors. Just a couple more observations, this versus the 618. The 618 will set flat upside down, whereas the 620 will not. With the battery on, it does, and the dust collection fitting removed. But again, if you're changing bits, you need to have that battery taken out. But with a single wrench bit changing system like this, I'm willing to bet you'll have it on its side rather than on its top anyway, so it just may be a non-issue. Then one thing I really like better about the 620 compared to the 618 is these little dust shrouds. They're much easier to install when you have a bit already in, so I like that. I'm just running a 1/4 inch spiral bit right now, so I've got the small one installed, but you've also got the option of this larger opening. There's a little bit of an angle on that dust collection fitting, and it also swivels nicely to keep that out of your way. When plunging inboard grooves, the dust collection wasn't perfect, but I didn't see any falling to the floor or flying in my face, and when you're doing a normal edge profiling task, the dust collection is just about perfect. So if you've been waiting for your ship to come in on just the right 2 1/4 horse cordless router that'll handle 1/2 inch bits, I'd say this 620 might just be the one, and honestly it was worth the wait. So if this is looking good in your eyes, just drop down to the description box. You'll find links to this one as well as some of my other favorite routers and router accessories. Thanks so much for checking it out. Give me a thumbs up if you like the topic, and we'll see ya on the next one.